Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast, kind of. We are looking at a Tuesday night slate here. A pretty fun set of games, I would say, Nate. In this one, we're taking a look at the Charlotte Hornets on a second leg of a back-to-back, taking on the Golden State Warriors in Golden State there. Also want you to like and subscribe to that page. Check out the other game video we have and our player props up for you guys, as we are bringing you each and every weekday this regular season. Also head to thelines.com. That's where you can get the great written content that we have for you guys all season long, and use our odds finder tool. That's where we go ahead and let you guys shop those lines to the best of your ability, show you what all those U.S. sports books are putting out. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 10-game slate and then talk about these Dubs and Hornets.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from here for sure. I mean, it starts with the Lakers +4 at Magic. Don't know how they're expected to be competitive in any game right now, but, here we are. And 76ers -4 at the Wizards. That seems small, but those teams have played each other tough, and Porzingis might be back. Rockets are +14 at the Celtics. Hawks in a pick'em at the Pacers, who are on a back-to-back. Shows you where the Hawks are at. Clippers on a back-to-back, +5.5 at the Raptors. The Suns +7 at the Grizz, both teams coming off Christmas losses. Spurs on a back-to-back, +6 at Thunder. Knicks +5 at Mavs. Jalen Brunson's questionable. The other game we break down, the Nuggies -2.5 at the Kings. Domantas Sabonis going to try to play through a thumb fracture, apparently. And then the Hornets +5 at the Warriors. That's the opening line here, as the Hornets are in a shootout with the Blazers on Monday night. It might rise or it might fall, I guess, if the Hornets wind up winning that shootout, but doubtful. I mean, after what the Warriors did on Christmas Day against a Grizzlies team that many thought were among the top in the West and came in talking some smack and once again ran into a freight train. We were kind of dancing around it, saying, I mean, before we did that video on Memphis Warriors, like, this feels like a trap, Josh. Like, I'm not going to be too strong on Memphis to roll. We were like, either close game or Memphis blowout, but we did not. We once again slept on the Warriors at home, and just a completely different team. And galvanized to a degree, of course, by not having Steph Curry, the stars out, bets up type situation. A bit of a delayed effect because they still suck so much on the road, and they basically didn't even try to turn it on in those two New York games with historic blowouts. But as soon as they get back home, get into a matchup with a team that loves to talk, they turned it on. And now they get a team that just is kind of like tissue soft on the defensive end. We'll be happy to just run up and down, get everybody some stats, and give the fans a nice show. And then head on to the next city and continue to tank for Wemby. So it's definitely a good opportunity to take the Warriors, I think, even at -6, 7. I think if they win, it's another Warriors avalanche in the third quarter. It's come on two different ends of the floor their last two home games. They scored 40 on Christmas in the third. Ty Jerome, I think, had like 18 on his own, apparently, in the third quarter. And then the previous one, they held Boston's high-powered offense to 20 in the third quarter to pull away. So, I mean, they haven't been going over that consistently at home. Their games are averaging 230. This one's at 237. The Hornets are a little less efficient offensively on a straight-up back-to-back situation. So I don't necessarily look for them to do the same thing they've been doing in every game on this West Coast road trip. I hope they come along for the ride. If you're going to follow us on some player props on Draymond, maybe Poole to have another nice game. But I think the smartest play here is just Warriors to win and cover. The home team has actually won 6 straight in this series. It's actually 5-1 to the under, surprisingly enough, when you think about the way these teams play. But LaMelo has not played well against this defense. And the Warriors haven't always had everybody in terms of them lighting up the other team. But right now, with their young guys out there playing so much better at home, and with Draymond setting the tone, which is what one of the scenarios we said. It's like, unless Draymond can just galvanize everybody and be the engine that they need, we can't see them beating Memphis. And sure enough, he put up 13 and 13 And I'm not talking about points. I'm talking about Draymond's stats there. I think he can do that again against Charlotte, and that they'll roll.
Yeah, that that sounds right to me. And do not underestimate the power of Andrew Wiggins and how much he means to this team as well. By the way, as he was missing a ton of games, and that shouldn't be understated. The home away thing, it's real, man. Like I think a 15 game sample size of 13-2 at home versus a 19 game sample size of 3-16 on the road. That works, man. And like you said, we're seeing it like all across, you sort of alluded to, you said another stark home road split, because there's like a dozen teams with 8-point differentials between how many points they're scoring on the road versus at home, or how well their defense is playing at home and on the road. When you look at the drill down the stats for the Dubs, like they're not doing that much differently on either end of the floor over the span of these games. It's really just they're I guess on defense, they're just a fire hose. They just hemorrhage points, and they don't get back on defense. And once it starts raining, it starts pouring. And they seem to have just given up this year. And there's something to be expected in that. And that is something that Draymond Green talked about, which is like, it's an interesting clip, but it's basically like, yo, we're here to win titles. When you win 4 and you make 6 of 8, like it's all about titles. And so if we're down in the middle of the third quarter in a game that we don't really need right now, or we don't see it, then we're not going to come out and whatever, right? Kerr's sitting guys in the fourth quarter. You see James Wiseman playing a lot in the second half right now, et cetera, et cetera. So like they're down to fold, and that does help, sort of exacerbate all the issues they have on the road, make everything just more glaring and awful looking. But you can't deny 106 defensive rating at home versus 120 on the road, and you really can't deny just the 3-point shooting and the differentials between the most important guys on their team and the way that they score at home versus the way that they score on the road. Klay Thompson's got 3 more points per game at home, 20 points a game versus 17. Wiggs is scoring 21.5 at home versus 16 on the road. And then obviously we always talk about Mr. Jordan Poole, and actually he's been a little bit better on the road over the last 5 and has had average 30 points in those games because of the fact that he's had to do it without Steph. When Steph came off, he's still averaging 20 on the road. But main point being, like, you look at his last few games, it's something that you talked about briefly. Obviously he needed that huge the way he scored against Memphis. They needed every one of those really to just sort of put Memphis in the coffin. But what's most important is where he's scoring from, and he is the Steph in the offense. And so if you at least have a Steph light replacement, then you should at least be able to continue that level of offense if Draymond Green is giving you what he gave you against Memphis on offense. It does scare me a little bit to pick, to bet on Draymond to be good 2 games in a row. And he hasn't been great at times against Charlotte. I'm just thinking of a couple of times where he got kicked out early a season ago and things like that. But then it's not like they need him to that degree. And I think the way you put it with Charlotte is just absolutely perfect in terms of let's just get some nice plays, have our announcer yell way too loudly into a microphone overexcitedly, and then take this show on the road to the next stadium. And that's what they're going to do tonight after they are going to lose by double digits to Portland and make their way down to Golden State the way they have in the past. With LaMelo back, like, what we can bank on is them playing at like 105 pace, and they're just being an absolute torrid amount of possession, a torrid pace with an ass ton of possessions basically. Since he's come back on the road, their games are they're losing 120 to 123 in those 6 that he's been back on the road. And then at home, it's even more ridiculous. They're giving up 133 points per game over their last 3 at home. So like, there's points everywhere to be had. There's fast break points to be had for definitely for Charlotte. And that's going to be the main thing that concerns me about the Dubs covering by 4 is if they do not get back on defense, because they don't take this game any kind of seriously, they're fucked, because they already give up the second most fast break points per game, right? And that's what Charlotte's been doing since LaMelo came back, scoring the 4th most, and just like we said, playing at that 105 pace. So that's what it's going to take for them, is get back. And if they do to any degree, I think they'll make plenty enough shots to win this game. I don't feel comfortable betting on an over right now. Like you said, these 2 teams are averaging like less than 230 in their last like 4 matchups or whatever. So it's a kind of a weird way that they've been playing. It's almost like they just sort of like both just shit the bed a little bit when they play each other on offense. But it still comes down to, I think, they're being more adults on the Golden State side, and then playing at home 13-2 straight up. It's a thing.
You think it's like a metaphorical pulling of the chair that like, oh, you're not playing defense either. Oh crap,
right.
I'm too open. But
Yep.
yeah, at some point you can't. If you're playing for championships, at some point you still have to turn it on, Draymond. You can't just like sit there and be the 11th seed at the third point of the season. So, I mean, every one of the vets on Inside the NBA was saying the same thing when Steph went down, which is like, this is an opportunity for these guys. And it's again, a stars out and a chance for all these young guys to feel secure in their role, to actually feel like they can do something in this offense. And for that to somehow be a blessing for the Warriors, because they were just awed by his greatness, having the best season ever, but they still couldn't win because they're just sitting there staring at Steph play and can't get back on defense, apparently. But I think now you're going to see them start to turn the corner a little bit, at least handle business against teams that they definitely should beat at home. And yeah, Dre, not great his last two at Charlotte, I think, but an 11, 12, 19 triple-double in one of those recent home wins. And Poole had 31 with 7 threes in the other home win. So both those guys can get theirs against this team.
They can. And I mean, if you're Charlotte, you know that Golden State turns the ball over and they allow fast break points. So I think no matter what, if Jordan Poole starts draining threes, Clay starts making shots, Wiggs is getting dunks, Kuminga's getting dunks, doesn't matter. Charlotte's still just going to push. There's never going to be a moment that Charlotte's strategy is going to change from go as fast as you possibly can to slow it down. It's just not going to happen. Even if you see the Dubs coming out and scoring in transition on their own, still just going to be pushing the pace for Charlotte. So 237.5, it scares me a little bit, man, but it's probably pretty fair. And I think we should expect 240 points scored in this game. And I think the Dubs should be able to handle, 3.5, 4 points, depending on where you find it right now. So that's all the time we have for you in this one, though. Definitely like and subscribe to that page. Check out the player props, where we're going to have plenty of players from the games we cover in our game videos, as there's a lot of points to be had. So until we see you next, happy betting.